Hello and welcome. This is your girl, Pepin, from Pepin Reacts, and here I got my best friend here, Meader. Meader, how you doing?
Hey, I'm here too.
And we're ready for another great, exciting, heartwarming reaction to a show that we watch called Breaking Bad. And this episode, I think we might see the return of who? What? Those tidy whities. Are you excited, Meader?
I've never been more excited for anything in my life, Pepin.
Really? What about the pizza?
That was pretty good. Listen, if those tidy whities bring dipping sticks.
Maybe not multiple, but maybe just one dipping stick.
Oh, the more the merrier.
We're gonna get this reaction in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Oh, I think this is a cigar.
Season 3, Episode 3, IFT.
Did I even say what episode we were watching? No.
No, you talk too much about whitey tidies.
No. Well, seems typical. The lighting is very extreme here. That was Season 3, Episode 6 of Breaking Bad. And when I say Episode 6, I definitely mean Episode 3. But, you know, if I put 2 3s up, that's 6. So, hey, same thing. Now, this episode, we saw the return of Tidies? The Whiteys? The White. Here. I mean, Skylar's wearing white at one point, so all this comes full circle. This is definitely, I'd say, we've had kind of like a couple like setup episodes in a way. This is very much a setup episode, but also kind of pushes things further. And also, I think, kind of like the similar episode, we're getting all these chess pieces, we're identifying what they are, and kind of getting them right into position. But the thing is, it's very unclear how these pieces are going to hit and interact with each other. Who's going to be where and who's going to be what. So I think my impression of the episode is very good. I think there's some great acting from the person who plays Skylar. I think Walt did an amazing job. I think everybody did this really good. And this is just very, very entertaining. Meader, what's your general thoughts on the episode?
Yeah, I definitely agree. Kind of a setup, kind of a payoff at the same time. I think it did a good job of moving the chess pieces around, taking some chess pieces that, were moved back in season 1 and actually like being like, oh, that's why that was put there for this play now. And I think it did, like the last episode, it revealed a lot and it answered a lot of questions that during the episode you were like asking a question and then it like immediately gave you the answer. So it did a really good job of answering a lot of questions that we have, tying up a lot of loose ends, and setting up future plot points all simultaneously.
Now, I think maybe part of the payoff that happened with this episode, because there kind of isn't a lot of payoff, like, if you think about it in certain ways, like, it's not like we're pushing forward, but I think we're seeing a lot of resolutions to plot lines that have been built up for a while. And we can touch more on them as we go throughout, but just to give a quick example here, we have like the Ted Skylar plotline. There's been that sexual tension building up, and now we see a resolution. There's been kind of the Walt Skylar awkward dad sort of thing, and not seeing things. We see that resolution right there. We see what's Jesse doing. He's getting a house, he's cleaning up. What's he doing exactly? We see that resolution. When we see this whole thing with the twins, we kind of see, who are they? Okay, they're related to Tio and people, and there's a cartel, and there's this other thing. So we essentially, I think what it is we get the answer to a lot of questions, and we get a lot of payoff for things that have been set up previously. A lot of minor things, I would say, but still things that are very good to see, like get put out there.
Yeah, 100%.
All right, so as far as adjusting the episode, I'm trying to think of a good place to start. Maybe we start with Jesse first, because I think Jesse has probably the most minor role, but probably a big role as well.
Okay.
So give me what happened to Jesse.
Jesse is sitting alone in his house listening to Jane's voicemail. And then Saul comes in and is like, "Hey, I'll pay you to make Walter cook again." And Jesse's like, "Okay." And then he keeps, for the rest of the episode, just listens to Jane's voicemail nonstop while looking sad. And then in the middle of one of the calls, the line goes dead and her voicemail has now been disconnected. And then in the final scene, we see him standing in the camper in the middle of the desert with a very nice setup, looking like he's going to cook again.
Yeah, that setup was really nice. That's not the same setup he had before.
Mm-hmm. No, this looks like a 4-batch, like big
Hmm.
setup. This is a full, like, professional thing,
Hmm.
as far as professional can be in a camper.
Yeah, and so he's going full out here, and if anybody's making really good investments, I mean, okay, we can say good investments, in air quotes here, but Jesse's making some pretty good investments here. I mean, he got a $400,000 plus on a steal in a house, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's putting money towards the lab equipment, which is super pro and gonna have good profits. Provided he can cook meth appropriately. I think Jesse kind of has his life put together. Maybe not the right direction, but I think it's some good character development to see.
Yeah, because last time we saw him cook, he wasn't able to get up to the quality that he wanted, but he was way above the quality that Badger wanted. So personally, I think he's going to be able to cook, whether it's up to Walt's standards or his own standards or not. It's one thing, but he'll be able to cook something usable. My question is, what about distribution? That's been, I think right now, that's where he has a brick wall. We know he can cook, but how can he sell? Is this going to be a 10th at a time again?
I feel like this is a good opportunity to get Walt back in the storyline with the making meth. I mean, Walt's getting to a point where he's going to be at a low and just needs to do something to gain back control over his life. So I feel like that's going to be the temptation that pulls him in. I'm a little bit less certain with my initial thoughts about how the direction was going, where Walt's going to get kidnapped and everything like that. Doesn't seem as likely at the moment, just granted where some of the plot lines are going. But I think Jesse may get something of high quality, but I think Jesse is going to be looking for something more. And
Man.
I think there's two big themes that have been throughout the show that are present in this Jesse storyline. Number one is communication with particularly cell phones and calls. Like it's so weird how much like phone calls and kind of this theme of communicating is very, very present. Jesse's of course in denial, or maybe it's a mixture of different things. I think it's partly denial that Jane died. He can't get over that. I think he just wants to hear her voice, and there's like no chance of communication there, like absolutely none. And similarly, Walt's kind of dealing with something similar on that front, where there's like no chance of communication with Skylar, particularly here. I mean, there was, but she was just kind of getting blunted with the communication. So I think that's a similar storyline, and I think that the answering machine message for Jane, which it did set up in season 2, I think it was very well crafted to have a different meaning at different points in that storyline. Like there was like the do not call, like kind of like almost a command almost. There was if you're cool, leave a message. Jesse was said to be cool by Jane, so there's that. There was some other part that had a different context, but I think there's like 4 or 5 different contexts that the message kind of had in the relationship to Jesse at different points, which I think was kind of interesting. It's a way. It's almost like when a chorus reprises, but in a different light. It's kind of like that.
Yeah, I think that's very astute. So, and then when the voice, the answering machine stops, when the line's finally disconnected for good, that's when Jesse decides to go cook again. Was the idea of Jane the only thing keeping Jesse from cooking, from that life? Let's say it never got disconnected. Do you think he would be in the desert cooking?
That's a good question. because I had my own theory about why Jesse would start cooking,
Mhm.
which I can get to in a second, but I want to address that first because that's a very interesting idea. Because essentially, the reason why he got out of the game was because of Jane,
Mm.
and maybe that's also a third or maybe a fifth way to look at that. Like it's not just like a longing desperation like that, but it's also he needs to listen to Jane's voice because he feels that call of the void. Like part of him wants to go back to the meth business, and I think Saul kind of tempted him a bit with that, talking about money and stuff and everything like that. And so I think you're right. I think he was also calling her for that reason too, to prevent himself from going back in. Which it's interesting that he would, if that's the case, it's interesting that Jane, or without Jane there, or without just without the memory there, or that thing to hold on to, he just kind of goes right back to it.
Mhm.
It's interesting. There's that kind of gravity to it.
Yeah, I mean, he was kind of using her voicemail like a drug.
Hmm.
He just
Hmm.
kept taking a hit, taking a hit, taking a hit. Anytime he felt low, he wanted to get high again by taking that little hit. And just that little, 10-second voice clip kept him going. And then when that dried up, well, gotta make more.
Oh, I see. I see. So he got addicted to that, and then he got just need to get from somewhere different source essentially.
Pretty much, yeah.
And I feel like he's in a similar point here as with Walt because he has money, but the money is not buying him his heart.
Well, he doesn't have money. And Saul said that he's house poor, so he has a home. He bought equity, but he doesn't have liquid cash. And if he did, it's not a lot.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's right. Because the house costs 400,000 or
Yeah.
whatever, and then he only had like 500-600,000.
Yeah. So, let's say he has $200,000 left over, which he doesn't because he had to pay Saul, he had to pay closing. Like,
Mm.
we know there were expenses, but let's just say it's 200,000. Like, how long will that last him? 3 years, maybe, if he budgets really well, 4 years. Even if it's 5 years, like that is not a permanent solution. He will need to work again. But
Hmm.
so maybe he's thinking of the future at this point. Maybe Jane's voicemail cutting off was him disconnecting from the past, and now he's looking at the future. So maybe it's not, the negative connotation of that was a drug, now he's going to a different drug. Maybe there's also that was the past, and now he's going towards the future.
Hmm. Hmm. A lot of things to think about that.
Yeah. What was your read? Because I've just thrown two out.
Hmm. So I think everything you said is accurate. So let me just point that out first.
Mhm.
But I think the thing that I'm gonna put out here, just as another layer, is the layer of pride. And I say that because we saw that with three different characters this episode, and pride has been a big theme of the show in general. So the first character is Hank. We saw a lot of pride with, which we'll get to. We saw Walt, and I think we see Jesse's pride here too. And what makes me think about that is, Jesse felt like he was at a low at last season. He felt like he was at low and kind of starting new, and just like he knew where he was essentially, and he kind of got talked down to by Saul. Also, he got talked down by his family, right? His dad was just kind of addressing him like a trying to like throw a hand out a little bit, but also kind of addressing like a junkie child, essentially.
Mhm.
And so I think Jesse just kind of like just fed up with people's shit in their appraisal of him. Saul definitely like underappraised him. And so what does Jesse do? He buys the house, right?
Mhm.
And then he's also dealing with this trauma over Jane. And this is a little bit more tenuous here, but I think the connection to pride there is Jane had appreciation. She had a proper appraisal of him that nobody else has had, maybe
Mhm.
besides Walt a little bit, right? But I think that's something he was connecting onto there. And then I think in the end, also Saul came back and said, "Hey, get your partner here to make some meth." And I think Jesse was a little bit offended there because he's like, "Why aren't you asking me?"
Mhm. It was a little jab.
Yeah, like I'm just as big as part of this as well.
Mhm.
So what does he do? He needs to kind of. I think this is the trajectory he's going. He's trying to act out his pride here, or he's trying to prove he's worth something. And this is why he's trying to make meth on his own. It's to make a point more than anything. Like, I can do this. I am something.
So he takes all of his money and he puts it into this house, and now he's literally sitting in a big empty house alone. And then Saul comes in and puts a little prickly cactus. He just comes in and he pokes him.
Oh yeah.
He's just this little thorn in his side, if you will, that he just puts down next to the door. And maybe that's what motivates Jesse. I think that's a really good read on your part. A little bit of pride involved.
Yeah, I think that's a good analogy there too, because I don't think Saul meant it to be like that, but plot-wise or metaphorically, that is kind of the prick in his side that kind of gets him to. Also, it kind of foreshadows desert, right? Because that's where he cooks.
Yeah, it does. It does, and it's something that you don't need to like actually water very much. Like, it's just always going to be there as this little prickly thorn. Like, you can't kill it. It's just there, and Saul brings it directly into his house.
Yeah,
and it's the only thing in his house. The only other thing was his bed and his phone, and his phone was Jane, and that's gone.
Yep.
Leaving him alone with a cactus.
I mean, some people might look at some of these plot lines or some of these analyses and be like, this is like an overreach, but I don't think it is. I think
is it though? Yeah.
No, the show writers are very, very deliberate with this shit here. Like, they wouldn't have had Saul give anything but a cactus here, or rather, they would have made whatever Saul gives be pertinent to the plot.
Was there some foreshadowing there with Saul saying, you shouldn't ignore a phone call of your counselor. What if I was warning you the DEA was coming to kick your door down?
Would the foreshadowing be
that Saul might have phone calls that he's making that are protective in nature? Maybe some sort of parallel there to Walt, and that he could have gotten a phone call saying like somebody is literally there to murder you. Like a protective phone call, like, don't ignore your phone, don't cut out the communication with me because I'm on your side type of thing.
So I think you're right. I think there's two things there. So number one, or let's say three things. Number one, I think it is a bit of a reference to what happened earlier in the episode with the twins and them getting called out, because of a phone call. And if there was some situation, we need there to be some communication with Saul and them. Otherwise, they're going to be fucked, right? In that kind of situation. So I think that's true. I think it does indicate that Saul is being real here. Like, this might happen and I need to be able to protect you because you're one of my investments. I'm your representative. Even if like, I'm not like super on board with you being my client, but you're still part of this, you're still a stakeholder. So I think there's that. One thing I'll say is I don't think it's indicating that Saul would be doing a hustle on him. I don't think Saul would incriminate Jesse, or I don't think he would call anybody on, or how to put this? I don't think Saul would ever snitch on Jesse. I don't think it would make sense for Saul's business. I don't think it makes sense for him in his culpability, because Jesse would just be like, hey, this is my lawyer, help me smuggle the stuff, right? So I think he's definitely an asset. But I think, he's just pointing out like an obvious fact, like, hey, come on, try to protect you. How am I going to protect you like this?
Yeah. Yeah, it seems like everybody this episode ignores lawyers.
So next up, where should we go?
I think Hank is standalone because Skylar and Walt are so tied together. I don't think we can talk about one without talking about the other. So Hank is standalone, so either now or after them, I think makes the most sense.
Okay, so let's do Hank, then the brothers, and then Walt, Skylar, sort of thing.
Perfect.
Okay. So with Hank's storyline here, I think it's the most difficult to decipher. I think I have some ideas, but I'm probably going to need to bounce off some ideas off of you.
Okay.
But just to cover kind of what happened. So Hank... He gets the promotion, and or he gets the call to go back to El Paso, which is obviously the place where he had that terrific experience. He didn't fit in number one, so that kind of sucked. But number two, he has like a lot of PTSD from that, and for some reason, like of course he's trying to play it off like, oh, this is great, but obviously it's not. He is very like And so he goes to some shady bar, which is kind of interesting. And he notices two people who are dealing drugs in the background. And it seems like Gomez is on board with taking these people out, right? It's like, we got to bust. But they both have kind of different ideas of what to do or how to do it. Hank, he goes to the bathroom and he looks in the mirror. Well, he has like a PTSD event, essentially. And then he looks in the mirror and sees it's cracked, which I think kind of calls back to some of this like cracked windshield, but in a different way, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a different lens on that idea.
Yeah, like he's broken in a way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so then we see Hank go back out, and then they decide they're going to bust him. And Hank kind of wants to take the physical approach. Gomez isn't going for it. And so then they decide to go out there. Gomez is like, yeah, we got to do a courtesy call, which makes sense because you don't know who's going to be undercover agent with these, right? You might think you're doing a bust, but you might be busting your friends, right?
Yep.
And that's not a good idea because now you blew the cover. So they go out there. Hank puts his gun under the seat, goes back in, gets into a giant fight, and he ends up winning. And everyone's just kind of looking at him confused. Hank's confused. His head is very red.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, Gomez, later he's at the office in the bathroom looking at the mirror again. And the mirror this time isn't cracked. I think there's something to that. Like now he feels like he's a bit more whole. But Gomez kind of like calls him out to his face and kind of gets them to fabricate on a lie, which is a lot of fabrication happening here. Like people trying to fabricate these different lies and trying to tell a story that's not necessarily true to kind of get off legally. Because if Hank revealed that he didn't have his gun on him, it kind of puts some bad intentions on him. And Hank is a little bit iffy in how he reacts to that. So is my general understanding of that plot line good?
Couple minor corrections.
Okay.
Gomez is against busting the guys at first. Hank's like, I think those guys are holding, and Gomez is like, the bartender's probably fucking holding. This place is a dump.
Oh, yeah.
So he doesn't want to bust. He's like, what the fuck's the point? And then Hanks kind of gives him a look like, no, we need to. And Gomez is like, okay, well, then we need to call it in because like that's the right thing to do. We need to go through the proper channels. And then Hank's like, fuck it. I'm going to go to use the bathroom. So he's saying like, don't even bother. Like, let's just not. And then he says, you're paying. Let's get out of here. While then he leaves his gun, lies to Gomez. So Gomez isn't calling it in. Gomez thinks they're leaving. Hank says he's got to piss again, goes back in, beats the guys up, which I just want to point out that fight. I like that he got hit. I think there's a lot of times where people, like the hero in the story, gets like never gets touched, and like it's amazing because he's so powerful that he doesn't even get touched. I think you can take on two bigger guys than you, get hit, and still look like the badass in it. Like you don't need to not get hit. I hate that in movies. I like that he got hit. And he got hit right in the eye, which, ends up, he has a cut under his eye later on. And I think that goes to your idea of vision and all of that. And then Gomez tells Hank, well, here's the story I told them, so that they can be on the same page with the story they're telling their superiors. And that's when he says, I was going out to call it in. You went back in to settle, to make sure everything was good. They jumped you. So he was lying for Hank. And then he's like, but just so you know, like what I didn't say is you left your gun. So what he's saying is, I know you fully went back in there in the attention and weren't jumped. I know I'm lying for you. Kind of implying like, I lied for you. What's the truth? And then Hank just kind of gives him a look that to me said, you know why I went back in. I went back in literally just to start that. He like kind of confirms what Gomez is implying. So without saying anything, they're both on the same page, I think.
Yeah.
Now, the why I don't think Gomez fully understands unless he puts two and two together, like we will have to do if we want to try and figure out, like, why did he do it? But I think there's enough context that Gomez has the same information we have.
Yeah. I think Gomez has had, he's kind of seen the undercurrent of this. Because I believe in season 2, there was a scene or two where Gomez was kind of talking to Hank and not being super pushy about things, but I think he was kind of getting feelers out there because he felt something was off with Hank.
Mhm.
Am I wrong about that?
I think he knows Hank well enough to
Mm,
know Hank.
okay. Okay. And I think he probably assumed something seemed off because Hank was being so pushy there. And yeah, the way you put it definitely makes sense because Gomez was kind of kicking and screaming the whole way through. He was like, no, let's not do this. Just trying to get him to back down, but nothing worked.
Yeah, because this isn't their scene. This isn't what they do. This isn't their job. This was Hank looking for a fight, and Gomez not understanding that until after it happened.
Hmm. Hmm. Right. Right. Hmm.
He's like, we can still go to Texas Roadhouse and get the blooming onion. Like he was every step of the way saying, "Let's get you out of this situation. Let's leave this situation."
Yeah.
And Hank just kept pushing.
Hmm. Yeah. So there's a lot of different potentials here. Answer me this. When did they decide to go to that place? Was it before Hank got the call, or was it after?
Right after.
Right after.
I think it was like that evening. Well, actually, it was still day. It might have been like literally right then.
Hmm. So I'm still processing this. I have my theory here. I want to hear what you think, and then I'm going to try to build off that.
I mean, it's a lot harder for me to say what I think.
I know. I know. Okay. Just stall for like 1 minute then, and then I'll give my thoughts.
Okay. So I think that there's plenty of evidence to say that Hank he still has the PTSD. He doesn't want to go back to El Paso. He gets the call and he says what he says to Gomez, but then he has a look on his face that's clearly like, I don't like this. Like, so I think he was there to start a fight, and he did. And he may not have even known at first that that's why he was there, but that's what he was there to start a fight. Um, and maybe hoping that being in a local fight will prevent him from having to go to El Paso.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Thank you for stalling there. I think that's helped me clarify a couple of things because there's like I think 3 or 4 different things in this, and it's multi-layered. This is where this is a really confusing scene, and things are done not like or things are shown not like told essentially in this.
Mm-hmm.
So we have the obvious aspect where Hank gets the news, and then he is not happy at all about this, and he feels like he's number one out of control, and then number two he feels a bit wounded pride wise, and then he just also feels like he needs to act out a bit too, right? Because he's got all this like pent up emotions, and he can't tell anybody because he hasn't told anybody he's been like petrified here about all this stuff. So he decides to take Gomez to this shady bar and, kind of find like a low end drug bust because Hank was obviously looking for something here. And he sees something and he's kind of contemplating taking action there. And I think to himself, he's trying to prove that he is who he says he is, right? He's trying to prove that pride out, similar to how Jesse's trying to prove his pride out. Right. So what does he do? Well, he kind of like starts positioning his words, but then he faces that like in his heart there, and he goes to the bathroom and he's just having like a PTSD panic attack essentially, and then he looks up at the mirror, sees his broken, shattered face. And again, kind of like the eye metaphor, the vision, but also like he feels broken. And he feels broken because he feels like he should be able to take action, to be the hero, to do something good, but he feels like he can't do it. And when he goes out there, he kind of feels like he has to overcompensate for this. So what he does is a complete overcompensation. He still gets kind of Gomez on this. And they kind of go out. He doesn't want guns to be involved. Partially probably because guns were involved in, like, when he shot Tuco, which he was definitely very, very, I think he was more disturbed about that than he let on. And he goes in there, and he just wants to fight, right? He has to get this aggression out, this kind of energy, and he has to win back his pride. And, and he also wants to get in trouble too, because he doesn't want to go there and he needs some pretense for him to kind of get taken out of this mission. So I think all of those reasons involved, and there's one more that I forgot, but I think it's pride, I think it is. I think it's self-defense, aggression, and that's right. The last thing is I think this is also kind of like season one Walter, where Walt would commit these violent acts, or he would kind of do these extreme actions to gain a sense of control over his life. Because Walt in the past, he gained that control through his aggression, and Hank here is kind of in the same kind of scenario with Walt, because he has this thing. He's been diagnosed with El Paso, essentially. And what does he do? He needs to kind of get away from this. He needs to do something to gain back that sense of, I can direct myself. So what he does is he acts out violently to kind of gain that sense of, I can choose what I'm doing. I have something. So that's my big brain fart right there. I want to get your thoughts.
No, I think all of that's apt and on point. I don't have any holes to poke. Just I just generally agree.
Okay. Do you think the point about pride is a little bit phoned in there, or do you think that's accurate?
I think there's some there. I think Hank has less of an issue with pride, but he also he realistically, if he doesn't want to go to El Paso, he should just say that.
Mm-hmm.
But instead, he's trying to take that out of his own hands, and put it in, make somebody else tell him he can't go. But the why is the question. Is this because he doesn't want to look bad? Is this because he doesn't want to have to fight people about this? Who would he have to fight about this? Maybe Marie. We know she was super excited about the idea of El Paso previously. She was a little hesitant.
Mm-hmm.
But how would she react if Hank said, "I got offered a promotion and I said no"? Us knowing Marie and how she's very straightforward and will say exactly how she feels and seems to push Hank towards whatever she feels. Is that just something he doesn't want to deal with? Is that part of it?
Mm-hmm. I think definitely not wanting to deal with it, but I'm going to double down on my pride argument, because I think I think Hank saying that he wants to be just a normal, regular DEA agent is kind of the same as Walt telling those people at the party that he wants to be a high school science teacher, right? Where Hank thinks he is or feels like, it's not that Hank feels like he is up there, right? But this is how people perceive him. And I don't think he can try to let people down his pride. I don't think he can admit he's down here and this is where he wants to be. And I feel like it'd just be a big blow to him. He can't come down from that talk. And I think a similar thing as Walt. Walt was kind of forced to, because he is a high school science teacher. But I think Hank has a harder time coming out with it. And he's also just not very good with expressing his emotions in general. But I think there's a similar dynamic there, but in different areas or different spectrums of context.
Okay.
All right, so let's move on to twins.
Mm-hmm.
So give me a little bit about the twins.
First, we see Tortuga, and we understand that we know he's part of the cartel. From previous episodes, he's an informant for the DEA. Then a guy comes in that we haven't seen before and talks to him for a little bit, and then it's his boss apparently. So we know he's higher in the cartel than Tortuga. Then he pretty much gets murdered by the twins in a bar, in the back room of a bar. So we know that the twins are also with the cartel at this point, and also work with this guy. Then we see them steal a car from some lady so that they can transport Tio to a meeting with Gus.
Okay, hold on just 1 second. That's why I should have been able to figure it out. I'm like, did they steal the wheelchair?
You were 99% of the way there.
I mean, they stole transportation. I guess I was right in that much.
Yeah, I mean, he still had his wheelchair because it had the bell.
Yep. Oh, okay. Sorry, I interrupted you there.
No, you're fine. That was where I was gonna stop, because that brings us to the meeting with Gus.
Mm-hmm. hmm So as far as what we established there with Tortuga, we kind of knew all those plot aspects. I think we just see the players involved. I
Hmm.
think you could have made a reasonable guess that it was the same party involved in Tortuga's death, like earlier, but
Yeah.
it doesn't really matter prediction wise. I think it's like zero. It explains something, but I don't think that had to be explained that way.
I think it does two things. It introduces this guy, this Hefe character, and it also shows the ruthlessness that we've seen of the twins, but shows them as like the go-to hitmen.
Mm-hmm. Hmm. Right, right. It talks them up a bit. Hmm.
It also ties them to the cartel, which we hadn't had tied before. You were under the assumption that they were working for Gus, and now we know they're working in direct conflict with Gus.
Mm-hmm. Uh, I will say the last part's not accurate. I didn't think they're working for Gus.
You did until last episode.
I thought there was a separate party because I think I said though let's not get into the weeds on this, but I'm pretty sure my opinion was that there was a third party involved, and that's who the twins were, and that that they had some dealings with Gus, but they weren't Gus's direct men.
Okay.
But if I thought otherwise, it is what it is.
Yeah,
But
it doesn't matter.
yeah, it doesn't matter. But so they have a dealing with them. It's kind of weird how this guy, the boss guy, is just like, oh yeah, behind this sheet here, and then there's other people in the bar, and he's like, okay, here's the beheading, just behind the sheet. Let's hope we don't scare away customers.
Hmm.
Seemed a little bit extreme, but maybe they're used to it there.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the implication. They also mentioned multiple times that it was a really shitty town.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I wonder if it's the same town that they were doing the worm crawl in.
Maybe.
Hmm.
I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, because they seem like they're used to seeing that kind of shit.
Yeah.
But all right, so the twins, they are a separate party, and so we get to the meeting here. And the meeting, it makes it clear that the boss guy is not in opposition to Gus. They're not the same party, but they're kind of two mutually beneficial partners, essentially. We have the cartels on one end, and I feel like the cartels are probably a bit higher than Gus on this rung, or at least they have more resources. So they're a bigger organization. So I think Gus is definitely lower here, at least as far as power goes. And the boss, I thought he may have been related to Tio and them, but it doesn't seem like he is, because he addressed Tio by his like full name, which could just be the case, but I think there's a little bit of distancing there. It's like, this is one of my men. And we also got confirmation that Tio was the original distributor in that area, and he taught Tuco everything he knew. So we got some confirmation there, and Gus has a very strong financial interest in Walt, it seems. Like, very strong to kind of play his hand like that. And for the time being, the boss is laying off, but it doesn't seem likely that the twins would be laying off, because they had like a very, honestly, they've had the same like expression this whole like time we've seen them, but that expression is still very unnerving. Like it's like violence without like imposition, or I don't know what I'm trying to say exactly. But the one key takeaway I had from the scene is Gus, I feel like, has a better hand than he's letting on.
Yeah, maybe so. I think it's very interesting because Gus says, I'm doing business with him right now, leave him alone. But as soon as I'm done with him, he's all yours. So this is like another threat of death hanging over Walter other than his cancer.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And now it's like, not only is money a really good reason for Walter to go back into business with Gus, but literally if he doesn't, he's dead.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
He doesn't even know that, and that's the biggest kick in the balls of all of it.
Yeah, he's not seeing the full picture he's involved in,
Which is true from the very beginning of the episode.
Hmm. Yeah. Things are kind of happening outside of Walt in a way. And
Kind of in the way that he had cancer growing inside him before he knew he had cancer, and it got to the point where it was terminal. It was inoperable. They didn't think he was going to survive. Like, he didn't know about the cancer until he knew about the cancer. So, like, and then it changed everything.
hmm.
And right now he has this cancer growing that he doesn't even know about.
I think I'm gonna add on to that analogy there because I think in this instance it's more like Walt is the cancer and people are trying to cut him out now. Like they've identified that he's there and now they're trying to deal with him.
Yeah, I guess it just depends what perspective you're coming from.
That's true. Whether you're from Walt's perspective or whether you're from their perspective. Okay.
Yeah. I would also say I think there's implication that Tio is above Hefe, above this boss character we learned, because the boss addresses him as Don Salamanca,
Mm-hmm.
as a Don. So that's like very high up in cartel. Um, so this guy is either same level or lower to address him that way.
I thought Don. Okay, so Don is like a title.
I believe so.
Okay.
Cartel Don. Don is a title for someone revered for their power or wealth.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. So and let me just reestablish that. So you're saying that the the Don guy is or where's Gus in relation? Is he below Don or this guy or is he above?
I'm not sure. Based off of based off of the conversation, it seems like they are two businesses working independently,
Mm-hmm.
but they're like two separate distributors pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
But Gus has a very firm territory that the cartel has said you can have this territory. And if the cartel is saying that, then the cartel is probably getting a cut. So I think the cartel owns everything, but says you can lease and sell in this area.
Mm-hmm.
That's my understanding.
Yeah.
Which, depending how high up Hector Don Salamanca is in the cartel, would define how much he's able to adjust that. But clearly the cartel is right now saying we'll listen to what you're saying, but it's not going to last forever. So
Right.
these guys may act outside of us, and we're not going to stop them.
Yeah. So maybe the way to put it is Gus is probably underneath. Cartel has more power, but maybe Gus has some sort of home field advantage, or has some leverage at least right now.
Yeah, I would say Tio probably is on the same level as Gus, except has an extra layer of respect within the cartel.
Oh yeah,
because he's part of like a family that's fully integrated, and Gus is kind of an outside player, but has a bigger territory and is making a lot of money actively. Whereas Don is riding on the title, Gus is riding on current production, which is a big deal. Putting them kind of similar level. That's all based solely on what we currently know. There may be stuff we don't know.
Yeah. I think the biggest question for me is how these twins are going to play into the plot later, because right now they're wild cards. There's a plot point about them seeing the baby, and they made a very good note of that. So it makes it seem like the baby's in danger. There was a couple plot points with Gus and Walt that kind of made it seem like Gus had some interest in the family. That's a little bit more tenuous, but I think there's these different plot points that are converging on that. But Gus, I can kind of predict a little bit, I think. Though, again, he's keeping his... I don't think Gus really reveals what moves he's making. I think he's more just trying to... He's like orchestrating behind the scenes. He doesn't want to be seen. They're twins, though. I think they're like very straightforward, but they're also just like very erratic, very, very like I think you might put them on like lawful evil, but you can't see their inner rationale is hard to determine, but they have some rationale to what they're doing.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean they're hard to read in general. They seem very single track minded thus far.
Mm.
There's things that need to be done and they do it. Like no, there's nothing stands in their way. They just make things happen.
That's true. They need a wheelchair mobile. Well, let's just take it from this lady.
Yeah, they needed clothes. They just took it from somebody. They gave stuff up. Like they don't give a shit about money, about things. They're literally just there to murder Walter for murdering their family. It's blood for blood. Like they are like the perfect hitman.
Mm. Mm-hmm. And if you're lucky, you might get a car.
True.
Mm-hmm.
Gotta be a goat though.
So next up, we have who's next after this?
Walter Schuyler.
Oh yeah, okay. So let's see. The which one would be easier to tackle? Let's do Walter. Uh, Walter is just so fucking awkward. Like this episode, he's been awkward the last couple episodes,
Mm-hmm.
but like I don't know. I could see this shit on like r/cringe. Like he he's playing his hand though. This is the thing. So he forces himself inside the house. Skylar is like, get out of my house, and she's like, nope, I'm gonna stay right here. And he's trying to make this work regardless. And I think it's a bit of just like playing into the fantasy of what he wants. But I also think he's also putting his hand out there, and he's accepted the consequences even if he goes bust. Right? If Skylar ultimately does call the police on him and he gets put in jail, that is far better than to not have any time with his family, because without his family, everything was for nothing. So this is his going all in essentially.
Yep. And I mean that's what he said. He's like call the cops, do what you gotta do. If I don't have my family, I literally have nothing to lose.
Mm-hmm. I gotta say, I hate to admit this, but okay, I don't think I would be in Walt's situation, but I might do similar to what Walt's doing right now. If I was in that predicament, like I'd probably just keep trying to pretend like everything is normal, like everything is great, and just hope that maybe eventually it sticks, right? And it's obviously not a good strategy. It's obviously cringe, and it's not good. I don't think I'd overplay my hand like Walt's doing, but I could see myself going in that direction to some degree.
He's also using quite a bit of emotional manipulation, and he's using other people as pawns,
Oh yeah.
i.e., his child,
Mm-hmm.
or both of them for that matter.
Mm-hmm. He's utilizing Walt Jr. to great effect.
Mm-hmm.
He even brought in my man Lewis into the
Mm-hmm.
picture, right? I mean, Walt's just trying to say, "Hey, Skylar, I've got God on my side."
Well, I will. Anything that we need to air out, we can do in front of God.
And he knows that Skylar, or he at least assumes that Skylar is not going to come out with the drug stuff for some reason. And we can touch that up on Skylar, but he's pretty confident about that. And I'm pretty sure he's confident about that because of what happened with everything that Saul said to him before.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything more to it than that? I mean, probably knowing Skylar too, but beyond that?
I would say knowing Skylar as well. Yeah, I think he's taken the time to do the math.
Okay. Yeah. Because yeah, that's the thing. It's cringe. It's like fucked up to do, but it doesn't come across as reckless.
Yeah.
It's just playing high stakes, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
And he's completely right. He has his name on the title of the house. There's been no domestic dispute here. I mean, there's of course the issue of the meth, right? But outlooking everything but that, Walt doesn't have any reason to be kicked out of the house from a
Sure.
legal perspective.
True.
So yeah, and it is interesting that Skylar is trying to take this approach, but she can't buy it. But she can't. She's in a bind.
Yeah.
And
What'd you think about his speech with the money? He pretends to leave so that Skylar will come out. Skylar comes out and she's immediately confronted by a massive sum of money. And then Walt does his whole speech.
Was that he trapped her? I didn't catch that context.
He didn't trap her. He tricked her.
Yeah.
But yeah, he was manipulating her to leave the room.
That I think that's what he needed to say. I think it's what he needed to say though, like last season, not this season.
Well, I mean,
he didn't have the money at that point. That's the issue, right?
Yeah.
And I think everything he did there was really effective. And I think it didn't sway Skylar's heart, but I think it put her in the right lens, right? Because she was struggling to understand what Walt was going through his head. And I don't know if her interpretation of this was like, he did it for a reason, I feel better, or he did it for this reason, like, fuck you. Like, I feel like it's a bit of both. I'm trying to get a sense of that. But I feel like she was almost like, not heartwarmed, that's not the right word, but she felt like, thank God it was this, not something worse. Like I understand where you're coming from now, and I understand you do care about us a lot. But I also feel like it's almost like someone committed murder on your behalf, and you didn't want that. So I think it's a bit of both.
Yeah. How do you think it compares to her conversation with Ted last episode, where she asked Ted pretty much the same thing that Walter told her without her asking this time?
So I think I'm trying to think about how this would play out. I don't think season 2 Skylar, if Walt came out with this, I don't think she'd be on board at all. And I think she might even threaten to leave. But I don't know if I'm trying to figure out if she would like leave or if she'd stay, because it's kind of a bit of a coin flip. I think part of the reason why she stayed with Ted is because of the whole like the turning up the temperature on a frog or whatever. What am I trying to say? Like the temperatures increase gradually for the amount of deceit here, throughout this character arc for Skylar. So I think that would have been acceptable maybe here at this point, but season 2, maybe it would be a bit too much of a jump for her to make. But at the same time, I think she could go either way. I think she might accept it eventually.
I mean, Ted was honest from the word go, though. The second she called it out, he was like, oh, well, you caught me. Here's the truth. And he hasn't ducked anything. He's doing, in theory, the same thing for the same reasons, but he's been honest with her every step of the way.
So maybe it wouldn't be as salvageable because he wasn't honest to begin with and just kept on lying and lying and lying and lying.
And at what point in his cooking, in his decision making, could he have started being honest?
Yeah.
Like day one, hey, I'm getting with an old student and cooking meth to sell by the teen, like on the street. Maybe probably not then. How about when he starts making massive amounts? How about after Tuco? How about when he actually has the money, but he has no way to launder it? Like, at what point would he have been able to have this conversation other than right now? Did it take getting to the breaking point to be able to open up the gates?
Yeah. I'm very on the side that she would definitely say no. But I feel like she would be accepting if Walt had actually died. Like, I think she would have been like, oh, it was not for nothing. Or, I get it now, right? But the fact that he's still alive, that makes it complicated. More complicated for her ethically. Okay. So then I think the last thing with Walt is he's very manipulative here. I think he
Mhm.
does a very good job of, I think he's saying all the words he needs to try to convince. Now, it definitely is very manipulative, but I think he's also being very real and very rational too. Okay, so some of the stuff is just manipulative, right? Inviting Lewis over, getting the whole Walt Jr. thing, staying in the house, that's all the manipulative shit. But I think the stuff he said was very truthful for the most part. And I think at the end there, where Skylar dropped the bomb on him of I fucked Ted, we see him. I see we see him just kind of break, like he's been putting on this face and trying to keep things going, keep him alive, but it's like he can't he can't keep on with this fantasy anymore, or he knows his relationship with Skylar is broken, and I feel like he had his heart broken right there.
Mm. Is that the equivalent of Jane's phone being cut off?
Hmm.
Don't say "fuck you" to me.
No, I'm thinking about it.
Okay. It seemed like a Pepin moment to be like, "Fuck you."
Hmm. Yeah. Can you expand upon that? Because I'm trying to think that out and I'm not coming up with an answer.
There's an obvious truth of a broken relationship directly in front of you, a broken romantic relationship, absolute denial and clinging on to situation that doesn't exist anymore. And then a bombshell being dropped right on your lap, right in your face that you absolutely cannot ignore that brings you back to reality.
Hmm. Yeah. I think that's right. I think it's completely right. It is a parallel there, and I also think it's, in addition to that, a bit of a outplaying Walt, because Walt's been making this super awkward for Skylar this whole fucking time with
Hmm.
just being around, trying to act all happy and act like nothing's happened. And then I think Skylar's is like, oh, you're gonna do this? Well, guess what? I fucked Ted. And
Hmm.
now Walt can probably barely stand to be around Skylar. I think he's gonna have a really tough time just staying around.
Yeah, it was a turning of the tables.
Hmm.
Because then she sits down at the table and just starts acting all, nice and like everything's fine,
Mm-hmm.
while he's stuck there like the fuck just happened.
Mm. Yeah. Oh, that. Do you feel for Walt in that instant? Or are you kind of like, he deserves this? Or maybe not he deserves. He definitely deserves it, right? But like, what's your emotion there?
Mostly just confusion.
Hmm.
I interested to hear her rationale, because like he's saying everything he's doing is for the family, and he's like earning this money for the family and for the future, and what she's doing is completely destructive. But would she have the same rationale to say, well, I did this for the family because we need to break up in order for our family to work properly, and you won't do that unless I take an action? Or is she willing to admit, like, I did this for fully selfish reasons? Or like, I want to hear her side, and I don't think we know her side.
Hmm.
Walt
Okay.
did all of the talking.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I'm considering this. So let's switch over to Skylar, and then I'll expand upon
Mhm.
my thoughts on Skylar in the end there, because I have my own ideas. I'm still trying to flesh them
Mhm.
out. I think this episode is definitely one of those episodes where a lot goes unsaid, or there's things being said, but there's a lot left up for you to process and interpret, which kind of makes it a little bit challenging. At least discussing just after first watching here.
Mhm.
And it also probably makes it difficult for you because you might know how things play out, and you can't say too much either. So
Yeah.
it's kind of a double bind. But so Skylar's situation. So give me a little bit about Skylar. What happened with her? We covered part of it.
She's singing animal songs. Then she comes home and Walt's there, and she's like, "The fuck." And then she goes in and calls the cops, has to deal with all of that, can't say anything to the cops. The cops are like, "Did he hit you?" She's like, "No, he would never do that. He's not a danger in that way, but he is a danger." And they're like, "If you can't tell us, we can't do anything." Goes to talk to the divorce lawyer. The divorce tells the divorce lawyer what's going on, and then she's like, "You need to like let me handle this and get him out. I will get him out of the house today, and he'll go to jail. And she's like, well, I'm just kind of hoping that he dies. And then has the confrontation with Walt, where he explains everything that's going on from his perspective. She doesn't say anything, and then she fucks Ted and tells Walt at the end.
Mm-hmm. So, at the moment where Skylar started calling the cops, did you think she was going to report him for any drug thing when you first watched this?
I didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know, because I know it's like, how dangerous does she feel Walt is? Does she feel he's a danger? Or is she really mad about him selling drugs? Or is she really mad at their relationship and how broken it is?
Yeah. That's an interesting framing right there, because I think it is a bit about the drugs, though. Like, I think that's definitely there. But I think more so, I think you're right. It's more about the lying. Like, that's what really killed her with this relationship. And I think that's what's really affected her. And that's why she's so vindictive there at the end. Like I think that vindication comes out of being lied to.
Mm-hmm.
And so she creates her own truth, essentially.
Yeah, and I mean, Walt says right at the end, right before she says that, something to the effect of like, telling the truth is nice, isn't it? Like, we should always be doing this. And that's when she says her line.
So, from my understanding of Skylar, I didn't think she would report Walt. I could definitely see her trying to get him kicked out. Like, that makes sense, but that's kind of like low stakes. But I did not see her selling him out. It's partially for the reasons that Saul gave, but I think she does still feel something, and I think she doesn't want to have any part of it. I think her and Skylar, I think Gretchen and Skylar are kind of similar in that point of view. Like if you're doing some crazy shit, like just try to leave me out of this. So there was an interesting scene with the lawyer, and what happened with the lawyer is she's trying to get some advice. The lawyer makes it very clear that there's a client-attorney privilege, which is true, and that anything that goes to her, she can't reveal. And at this point, Skylar tells the lawyer about what happened. And the lawyer's like, oh, I know what we should do absolutely here. Like, gives the actual rational explanation here. And I feel like this scene was not at all Skylar coming clean or trying to get anything to move forward. I feel like she's just been holding in the secret for so long, kind of in a similar way that Hank's been holding in the secret, same way that Walt's been holding in the secret. But I think the secret's been just like weighing on her, and she just had to tell somebody, and this is the one person she could tell.
Yeah, that, and it's a good device for the audience to understand what she's thinking, because there's nobody else she can talk to about. Like, we don't know what she's thinking because she can't talk to anybody, so we can't see that. You know, so this is an opportunity for us to understand, well, why doesn't she, like, what is she thinking? And that's when she's like, well, I just thought he would, like, he's gonna die, so like, I don't see why I should destroy our family if, you know, he's just gonna die soon anyway.
Yeah. Plot device wise, that's what I'd call like a very effective plot device, because it's a in-universe explanation for Skylar to give her explanation. Like, that makes complete sense. It flows with the plot. It doesn't naturally just kind of, it's not just like exposition, here's what Skylar's thoughts are. It's kind of like very effective in that manner. So after that, or somewhere around that, so Skylar is kind of going along with this awkward house party. And I don't think she has much choice here, right? Because she could move back into Hank and Marie's or whatever, or get a hotel, but it starts getting really complicated really quick. And I think she's just chosen the path of least resistance.
Yeah, I mean, she's kind of been cornered into this predicament.
Yeah, I think that's where it's cringe, because like, what is she supposed to do? Like, Walt just putting this on her is just like, ugh.
The lawyer had also said to her in a previous episode, like, you need to stay at your house. You need to maintain residency there. Otherwise, you're forfeiting the house.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. So she doesn't want to do that. And I think that's a big reason Walt wants to get back, because he recognizes that, like, him not living there could imply that they're separated, and that will make him lose the house, but more importantly to him, his family.
Ah, I see. And Walt's been very clear about them not being separated.
Yes. Yeah. And I mean the bigger thing even then than that is when he giving his speech, he says like everything I've done, I have to live with now, but don't make it for nothing. If I don't have my family, then all of the things I did was for nothing. And like he's getting to the point where in the past he's been in denial. I'm the bad guy. I can't be the bad guy, he says to Saul. Now I think he's at the point where he's saying, I can be the bad guy if it's for good reason. But
Ah,
if I don't have the good reason, then I'm literally just a bad guy for nothing. And that's what he doesn't want. He doesn't want the I'm a bad guy for nothing.
I see.
He's willing to be bad if it's for his family.
Hmm. Hmm. Right. Right. Hmm. We'll have to think about with that one. Cause what caused that character shift with him? Besides, maybe it's just contemplation. Maybe he's having to accept this because this is his only way forward. He can't
Mhm.
move forward if he doesn't accept that. Like, how else is he going to play this besides just being an idiot? Which, or maybe not. Like, I think last episode he appeared stupid, or not stupid, but he appeared very erratic here. And I think now that he has that lens, he's able to focus himself into something productive. And obviously, that production is not very, it's maladaptive. It's very negative, right? What he's doing, but he's getting a lot better results than he was prior.
Mhm.
Okay, okay, that makes sense to me. And so Skylar has this interaction. She's kind of take on what Walt's saying, and I want to get your take on what you. Nothing said, but do you think Skylar appreciates the gift that Walt's giving in the money? Do you think she cares about that? Do you think she's like considering that as a part of how she's going to play this off with Walt? Like, what is her take?
Yeah, I do based only on her reaction upon seeing the money.
Hmm.
And she was willing to just be quiet and let Walt talk. So I think at least that has some implication for that. The question is, does she think the ends justify the means?
Hmm.
And she doesn't even know all of the means. So like, will she know that? Um,
Hmm.
at what point will some of that stuff come out and become part of her decision making here? Um,
Hmm.
but at minimum, I don't know. I think we have yet to see because Walt did all the talking, not her.
Yeah. Yeah. I think part of the storyline with Ted drives me to think that she's willing to accept the money because we have Ted who kind of is in a similar situation. And I think it's kind of saying that she's willing to accept the money, but she's not happy about it. She's willing to like, she's willing to elicit fraud, but very unhappily.
Mhm.
And I don't think if it wasn't for the money, I think she would just be like, ugh, right? But I think she's willing to go along with it. And okay, this is a very tenuous connection, but I think there's something there with Jane and Jesse to some degree. Like money kind of changes how you look at things to some degree. Skylar, I don't think as much, but I think it does play a factor for her. I mean, seeing it right
Okay.
there in cash doesn't hurt either, right?
Mhm. I mean, that was his play. That was the whole play. Was look.
Hmm. It not only said, it's not only like here's a bunch of cash. He said what this cash is. He put a
Mhm.
name to it.
Mhm.
So we have the whole thing with Ted. Maybe we can call him Creepy Ted. I don't know. Like I want to hate on Ted more, but I feel like I can't. Like definitely creepy, but right now he's getting wrapped up in Skylar's game. So
Mhm.
Skylar is when she's at the in the cafeteria, you can tell she's thinking something through. And I think her thought process here, and this is big speculation, but I think she just feels like she's being outplayed and she's not in any sort of control. And kind of going back to kind of Ted, or not Ted, Hank sort of thing, like feeling out of control with everything. Because here she's not having any control over her life. And she's trying to think of the one way to, number one, get control of the situation, but also, number two, how to get back against Walt because she just feels attacked and she has to fight back. And so I think she comes up with the one way she knows to kind of hit him where it hurts. And she speaks with Ted, which Ted is happy to oblige.
Yeah.
So from there, she gets back there. She is caught off guard by Lewis. I mean, Willar. I mean, he's there ever present, but we see him in person. It's blinding to the soul. And she plays her hand. She plays it hard. She has the same sort of face and expression and just kind of demeanor she had when she told Walt the fuck off in the last season. And I think before, where like in the last season, she seemed a bit more like pushing away. Here, this is more like a double middle finger. Like she's just more vindictive than anything. I think, which makes me think it's definitely more about the lying and the vindication than it is about. Like I feel like she's like, you put me in this situation, you made me make this choice. You know, you played your hands well. Well, fuck you.
Yeah. No, it was definitely there was definitely a lot of emotion behind her statement.
Mm-hmm. Is your reading that's vindictive, or are you just uncertain at this point?
Yeah, I mean it seems that way.
Okay. So I'm trying to figure out where you stand in that scene, and I'm not sure if you're not giving much information because there's later stuff you can't reveal, or if it's just like yet to be seen.
I just don't think we have a lot on Skylar's thought process because she hasn't been able to speak. We saw some of it. We saw that she feels like she just feels very stuck where she's at right now, and she doesn't have any moves. And then she saw Ted and saw a move she could make and took the move and then threw it. She threw it at Walt's face. But it felt very much in spite of his outward demeanor. She seemed to take some pleasure in knowing that she had a move now that she could tell him that would very much affect him when he's acting like nothing else affects him.
Yep. So I think there's enough there to go off of, but I'm probably going to be proven wrong next episode, which is fine. I think this is the fun predicting watching the show. I think one big plot device that's kind of done throughout the show a lot is that you take a character and you limit what they can do. You limit their control over their life, and then you see what they're going to do to overcome that. And a lot of times it's something erratic. A lot of times it's something big. When Walt doesn't have control, he starts making meth. When Hank doesn't have control, he starts a fist fight. What did Jesse do when he didn't have control? I think he just went into like a drug state or something. I don't know. He did something.
Has Jesse ever had control?
Okay. True. I'm trying to think of a moment when he did. He's just kind of like riding the waves, if anything. Okay. Skylar doesn't have control. She does this. So I think it's gonna be interesting to see where this plays out. Now one thing I'll add. This one's going a little bit long, but I think my predictions about the series are a little bit off kilter at the moment. I had a prediction that Skylar was gonna get killed, and that maybe Walt Jr. was gonna get killed, and Walt was gonna be taken to some sort of plant or something like that, wherever he was doing wherever that laundromat was or something. I assume that wasn't for chickens. It could still be for chickens, but I don't know what to be using like dryers for. That doesn't quite make sense to me. But it seems less likely now because we have like all these pieces here, and they could align in that direction, but it seems like they're going different places. So it's still a possibility that might happen. We have the twins as a wild card, so the twins, if anything, are going to be the ones that are going to act upon something. They might just go, and you already know they just go to Walt's house and just like put an axe and start doing stuff. So it's a possibility, but I don't know where it would go exactly now, except for just I don't think we know enough information about these pieces and where they're going.
Okay.
Sorry, I didn't leave you much to say anything on there.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Sorry.
No, you're good.
So okay. So if you guys like this reaction, definitely leave a like. comment, subscribe, do the thing, ring a ding ding, and Patreon. Where is it? Well, it's morepepin.com. That's more, as in like I want more, Pepin, right? .com. And until next time, you guys have a great day.